Hi everyone. Today I wanted to make a quick video showing you how to use SCP and SSH. Now, SSH is one of the ways that we can communicate with a server using text messages. SCP is more like sending a package. So if we think about it as if we want to communicate with a computer somewhere else, and it has the ability to let us send messages or send packages, being able to use SCP and SSH at the command prompt is a really quick way of us being able to send information over to our servers. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a sample file. So I'm just going to say touch sample file. Now this is my command prompt at my computer. I run Linux at home, and I'm sending this to a server somewhere else. Now you can see that I have created sample file, and it is living in my home folder. So what I want to do next is I want to send this sample file over to my server. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to say SCP, and then I need to give it the source of the package. So what file am I trying to send is my first argument. SCP then needs to take a second argument, which is where I want this package to go. So in this case, I want my package to go to the CIS server, and I want it to go just to my home in the CIS server. So I say my username at the name of the server. So my username is Holden-Gouveia, because that's me. And then the server that I'm sending it to is cis.necc.mass.edu. The next thing that I have to do with SCP is I have to tell it where I want it to go in that server. So I want to say colon, and then in this case I'm just going to send it to my home because I don't remember all of the names of the folders that I have. So I'm going to have it go to my home, and then I just want to call it sample file when it gets there. So this command is hopefully going to take the sample file that I just created, that's currently blank, and send it over to the server, and it will put it in my home and call it sample file. Now, because I had actually already made a sample file, I'm just going to call this sample file 1 because I wanted to test before making the video to make sure that everything was working right. So now when I hit enter, hopefully this is going to ask me for my password. I have hopefully typed in my password correctly, and it gave me the result that my sample file should be there. So then let's say I would like to check that my sample file made it over okay. So then what I can do is SSH into my server. So I can say SSH, and then again, remember this is going to be same user, same server, because this is just a different way of communicating with that server. So I'm still going to say my username at the server. So when I use SSH, SSH takes the argument of user at server. Then when I hit enter, ask me for my password. And now you can see I'm logged into the server. Hopefully when I do an ls, you can see sample file, and sample file is there. So you can see that I was able to create my sample file on my computer, then send it over to the server, and then I was able to log into the server to be able to check that it showed up there okay. So that's kind of the basics of how to do SCP and SSH. Now if you want to make changes to the SCP command, You can, you just need to make sure you pay attention to paths. If you aren't sure about relative versus absolute paths, please make sure you watch my video on absolute and relative paths. Thank you.